at Green Bay Botanical Garden this morning. Going to talk to you a little bit about all this beautiful snow that we have and how that's going to affect our plants that are growing and at your home too. We get this question a lot. Every year you tend to get like a really nice warm spring awakening and everyone gets excited to get out in their garden, and then unfortunately we get a little cold snap and sometimes a little bit of snow. Thankfully this year was just a dusting. A couple years ago we had a nice 24 inches of wet heavy stuff. So we get this question a lot, you know, what happens to my plants? Are my plants gonna die? So the short answer to that is no. A lot of your perennials that are already up and coming out of the ground are not going to be dying. They can handle this cold. You know, Wisconsin perennials are zone 4 or 5 depending on where you live and what you've planted in your garden, but they usually start coming up when they know it's time to handle the weather conditions. So a little bit of snow usually isn't going to knock them back very hard, and they will bounce back from it. If there's any tender foliage that's a little sensitive to the cold, you know, it should be able to compensate for that once things start warming up again in a couple weeks. So the one thing that, you know, is not going to survive right now is if you have annual plants in a container that you may have started from seed or purchased at a nursery that's doing pickup right now. You know, that's not stuff that you want to get out in your garden quite yet. You want to wait until probably end of April, early May before you set that stuff out. Like pansies, some petunias, kales that can handle a little bit colder can take it, but you kind of want to, you know, pump the brakes and not get that out too early in the year. Another question that we get are, you know, the fruiting trees, the apples, the cherries, all those really pretty spring blossoms. You know, fortunately they haven't started budding out yet, so this cold snap isn't going to affect them yet. If we get a really late cold frost and some really wet weather like we've had the past couple springs, you know, that might affect fruit production this year, but as of right now that's really not going to have an effect on those. So we have a couple little guys coming up if you want to kind of see, you know, it's poking out of the ground and not really going to be affected. These are all perennials. We have some little pushkinias. They are the little white flowers with the little green, blue stripes coming up, a really pretty spring bulb that's kind of coming to the end here. And we have some foliage of hostas poking out of the ground already. This is Ora marginata hosta. You can see those little buds there. You know, you might think they're really tender, but they are a perennial, hardy to our climate here. So they might be a little bit of cold and chilly, but they're not going to die by any means. A lot of this stuff that is coming up will kind of be slowed down by the cold. So it's basically if you're, you know, when you're cooking food, you put it in the refrigerator to keep it from spoiling, it kind of slows down the process. Same thing with these plants. You know, their processes are going to slow down a little bit. So anything that's flowering will hold on to their blooms a little bit longer. Anything that's about to come out and flower will just kind of stay dormant in that stage a little bit while right now until it warms up again. So we also have some other little things coming out of the ground now, some early spring plants. These bleeding heart foliage right here. It's a really pretty chartreuse color. You know, it's got some snow on it, but you know, that isn't enough to really knock it back and kill it. It's just gonna kind of, you know, stall out at this point right now. So, and with the spring bulbs, you know, we do have a couple daffodils that have opened up in various parts throughout the gardens. Tulips, you know, a lot of their flower heads aren't up yet, so they won't really be affected, but even if they were to get some snow on them, they, you know, won't die. They'll just kind of slow down a little bit, and then once the snow melts, they'll just be pretty as they ever were. So if you're looking for any more gardening tips or advice, make sure to check out our website, gbbg.org, and stay tuned for some updates throughout the garden. Okay, so speaking of spring blooms and stuff that can handle the snow, not necessarily like it. I don't like it, but you know, it's what happens. You gotta make do with what nature gives us. So another cool bloom that we have right now a lot of are these lenten rose. You've probably seen quite a few pictures of them. We have quite a few different cultivars throughout the gardens. This one here is Yellow Spot, and you can see it's got little yellow spots in it. That's probably how it got its name. And one of the cool things, Rachel, do you know why they call it a Lenten rose?
I'm not sure, Lindsay. Tell me.
Well, funny story. They call them Lenten roses. It's one of the common names because they typically open up during Lent or the Easter time, and yesterday was Easter, and here they are blooming. So this year they're living up to their name. Some years, depending on the weather, they start a little bit earlier and done before Easter. Some years they start a little bit late. It kind of all depends on the weather that we're having, but that's kind of cool that this year they actually were open during the Lent season. So that's yellow spot right there. We also have another pretty one called Green Gambler right here. This one's really nice and big. It's kind of got a greenish cast to the flower, but also some dark color on the underside or the back side of the petals. And if you have your Lenten roses at home, typically in spring when the snow melts, they look a little bit like this. And depending on the winter and the snow cover, you know, sometimes the leaves are nice and green, like some of these down here, but sometimes if they're exposed, they get all brown and nasty, and that's not very attractive. So now is a good time. You can do it in the snow when the snow melts. Is we typically prune all this foliage off just so they look quite a bit nicer when you come out and see them at the garden. So all you need is a pruners or a cutting implement, and basically all we do is we cut all these are all last year's leaves, so these are the leaves that they put out last year, that we just cut those off to the base of the plant. Just be careful so you don't cut off one of these new stems with the flowers on it, otherwise all your pretty flowers are going to go away. So you just cut them back, and then you will be left with a nice little clump of your Lenten roses. And then this year these are going to be the stalks that are going to be the leaves, so next spring when you do this again, these are the ones that are going to be pruned off. So that's a little how-to tip on pruning Lenten roses if you have them. And once they're up like this too and they have all those green foliage, they're photosynthesizing, so cutting these old leaves off aren't going to affect your plant in that matter. And another cute little plant that we have growing over here is a little baby Cordylis George P. Baker fumewort, just a fall planted bulb. Have these really pretty pink flowers in here. They just started opening up, I think, last week. Kind of got covered by the snow, but they're kind of a hidden little gem that's in here. We noticed these kind of showing up in other parts of the gardens too, because the chipmunks kind of like to dig up and then they plant them for us. So if you see a little one sporadically throughout the garden, that is probably how they got there. So that's about all that we have today in the orchard going on. You know, after the snow melts and it warms up a little bit, the next couple weeks we'll have more stuff blooming. So make sure to check us out, our website, gbbg.org, and cross your fingers. Hopefully we'll be able to open up so you guys can come check us out.